Well, speaking of Dokken, we did get a voicemail.
All right.
Regarding Dokken.
Okay.
What up, boys? Scribble checking in from L.A., and I just wanted to say, fuck you, you piece of fucking shit, Neeley. I am a Dokken fan now. What in the fuck? You know, all my life of just fucking talking shit about Rat and Dokken and just being a straight fucking metalhead. I really fucking hate your guts, because Dysfunctional is probably my favorite album that I've heard all year, even though it's not a new fucking album. But that's all, boys. How about something from fucking Dokken, Dysfunctional? How about, or you know what? Maybe even fucking Haunted from that 2004 shitty album would be killer. All right, boys. Hell.
A lot of Dokken love out there.
Yes. Jesus.
Should I be like Eddie Trunk and say, you know, Dokken's experience a resurgence because of me? Nobody...
You know, Dokken was dead until the Classic Metal Show brought him back. No one was talking about Dokken.
Nobody was talking about Dokken. Now everybody's talking about Dokken.
Yeah, now it's a Dokken world, man. Because of the Classic Metal Show, everything revolves around Dokken.
Right.
Let me tell you about the tour that I helped them get together in Japan. You know, I gave the guy in Japan a call, and I said, Domo arigato, fuck. Give him $1 million for 6 shows. And he said, that's a good idea. Well, so that's why I made the Dokken reunion happen. Me, Neeley, I made it go.
Well, speaking of that, that leads right into my story.
All right, Neeley.
Of course, if you weren't aware of it, there is a Dokken most popular lineup reunion, and the reason I say most popular is because there were lineups of Dokken prior to George Lynch, Jeff Pilson, Don Dokken, of course, Wild Mick Brown.
That's right.
So I say the most popular lineup because that is the lineup that is reuniting later this year for half a dozen shows in Japan.
So what day are you leaving for Japan?
Well, I'm not going to Japan, but you and I are privy that there might be a U.S. show.
Let's just say for sake of argument that show's not going to happen.
I won't be going to Japan.
What if Don paid for your ticket?
If he paid for my ticket, I would go. I'm not paying thousands of dollars to go to Japan, dude. That ain't happening.
That's probably not. That's probably $1,200.
Yeah, but the thing is just to go to L.A.
Yeah.
For a plane ticket, room, rental car, expenses, it's going to cost me $2,000.
Yeah, but Don's getting a lot of money for this one show.
Well, I understand, but I'm not going to say, hey, dude, can I go to Japan with you? You got to pay my way?
Call him up.
No.
I'll ask him right now.
Nah, I'm not doing that.
I'll call him up. Just, Don, will you buy Neeley a ticket?
But getting back to this, this is information that you and I have been basically sitting on for months.
Yeah, I know. I hate that Eddie's out there fucking saying that he had some insider knowledge. We knew about it 6 fucking months ago.
Yeah, we knew about this a while ago, but until the contracts were actually signed, when Eddie was spouting off about it, the contracts hadn't even been signed.
But we heard about, did we not hear about it in Cleveland?
We did last June.
Yeah.
You know, so this has been on the table for a while, but yes, the most famous lineup of Dokken is getting together at the end of the year. They're going to do a half a dozen shows in Japan.
Sure.
Only at this point, that's all that's scheduled at this point.
Right.
Anyway, Mick did a interview with Mitch LaFon.
Yes.
Regarding this lineup, this reunion.
Right.
And basically, even though he's going to benefit from this by a couple $100,000,
right,
he basically just said, you know, we're just doing this for the money.
And Don said, you motherfucker, shut up.
Yeah, well, if anybody can't surmise that, that's stupid. But anyway, Dokken drummer Mick Brown was interviewed by rock journalist Mitch LaFon for a recent edition of One on One with Mitch LaFon.
Right.
Speaking about the long-rumored reunion of Dokken's classic lineup, featuring Mick Brown, Jeff Pilson, Don Dokken, and George Lynch, Mick said, "There's talk of us doing something in Japan at the end of this year. And if it happens, and we make it through that, then yeah, maybe there could be some talk of more gigs." But I'm like, one step at a time, guys. I know how we are. Let's just get through that. 6 shows, and if we can do that, well, then yeah, maybe we'll move ahead. But I don't know. It's just up to in the air. We'll just see how it goes.
Right.
Well, I can confirm, because I've actually had this discussion at the time. This is the only thing that's happening.
Can you drop some names here?
As far as what goes.
In my conversations with Don Dokken.
Well, back in March, I went to Toledo, and Don and I sat in his room for over 2 hours having this discussion.
Yeah. And Don said, "Neeley, what should I do?"
And no, he basically said, there's no reunion.
Right.
There's no contract signed. There's no paper signed. There's nothing. I have nothing.
Right.
You know, this is the discussion, but if this happens, and at that time it was an if, it's on my terms only.
Right.
And if it ain't going to go on my terms, then it ain't happening, because I don't need it.
So in other words, Don got paid.
Well, he made it worth his while.
Is Don getting enough money to buy a small island?
Well, what does a small island cost?
Let's say $500,000.
Yes.
And the other guys, I'm going to assume, are not.
No. But Don owns 100% of the Dokken enterprise.
So why should he? Those guys better be happy they're getting anything.
True.
They should be happy they're not getting $2,000 a gig.
But he broke it down for me as to what the other guys are getting and how it why it's a good deal for them.
Sure.
And why it's a good deal for him.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, those guys are. I'm going to guess here, and I do know the number, but I'm not going to put the real number out there. I'm going to guess these guys are getting $150,000 to $200,000 for
about $175,000 a piece.
So that's a pretty good week
for 60 shows. Yeah, hell yeah.
Considering $175,000 would book what, 4,000 Lynch Mob shows?
Well, Lynch Mob is getting $5,000 a show.
So
that's what their asking price is $5,000.
So that'd be 20 and 100. So it'd be like a whole tour.
Yeah.
Of Lynch Mob for 1 week of Dokken.
Right.
That's a good deal for George.
Yep.
It's a real good deal for George.
Sure.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I might go see Lynch Mob next week.
I'd go.
They're coming here next Sunday.
I would go.
At the Outpost in Kent.
Really?
Yeah. I might go hang out with my buddy Sean McNabb.
Yeah, he is playing with him, isn't he?
Yeah. I'll go. Why not? Anyway, go ahead.
That'd be 35 shows for George. Under his current asking price.
And he'd have to pay 3 other guys at the current asking.
Yeah, well, he would have to pay Oni and Sean and what's his Freeman? What's his name?
Jimmy Deanda.
Oh, he's the drummer?
Yeah, from Bullet Boys.
Okay. So, yeah, he'd have to pay those guys out of that $5,000 plus their travel expenses.
Right. Where now he could just cruise for a week, check out some Japan.
So George personally would probably make $2,000 a show.
Right.
So at $175,000 for 6 shows, he's making out.
Yeah, he's making like 90 shows worth of shit.
Yeah, for himself personally, correct.
Yeah, that doesn't suck.
Not for 6 shows, not for 10 days worth of work. Then that includes traveling and all that stuff.
And Pilsen probably just had a week off.
Yeah, well, I know what Pilsen gets paid by Foreigner.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be almost a year's salary for him.
Really?
Yep.
That's all he makes?
Yeah.
I would have thought he made more than that with Foreigner.
It's, I'll tell you what it is. It's.
You typing it?
Yeah, well, I'm adding it up here real quick.
Right. I want to throw Jeff under the bus.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to say, but I'll tell you what he makes.
All right. Put it in the text or whatever. Let's see. Okay, times 10.
No, you just divide that into 175.
Wow. He's really not exactly retiring, is he?
Mm-mm.
I mean, it's good money.
I agree.
I'd like to make that much money. I make that with my museum. But I sure don't get to keep it.
Yeah. So it would take him, about 19 months to make that.
Yeah. So that's a good deal for him too.
Of course. That's how Don structured it. It's just like, listen, you can make what you make in 35 shows or 19 months or whatever in 6 days.
Yeah, you guys want to come and do it.
Yeah, if you want to do it, we'll do it. If you're going to bitch about it and think that you should get a quarter, fuck you. It's not happening.
Eat shit. And you know what? He should tell him to eat shit.
And he did.
Because he doesn't need it. He doesn't need it. He's the only one, unless I'm wrong, maybe Jeff, I don't know if Jeff has money or not, but he's the only one that has, saved his money, right?
Correct.
I don't know Jeff's story. I don't know Jeff well enough to know his story, but I know Mick doesn't have a bunch of money, and I know George doesn't have a bunch of money.
No.
So, hey, good on them. Hopefully these guys will all save this money.
So regardless if they split this 4 ways equally,
yeah,
even though they're not going to be splitting it 4 ways equally, and I can tell you that, they're still making out way better than what their current gig is.
Shit, yeah, all 4 of them are.
Mm-hmm.
It's 1 week.
So basically all they have to do is get out there, be on their best behavior, get along for 6 to 10 days, play 6 shows, and be done with it.
For that kind of money, they don't have to even see each other except on stage.
Or during practice or rehearsal.
Yeah, even that.
Because they're going to have to rehearse.
Yeah, once or twice.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, obviously, Don sings and plays those songs all the time, and so does George.
Right, so those 2 got it.
But, bring in Jeff
Mick.
and Mick. Of course, Mick plays those songs with Don currently.
So basically, they got to run through it once or twice with Pilsen.
And George. To get the timing right.
Yeah, I mean, George plays most of them.
Well, I know, but he doesn't do it at the same tempo all the time.
Well, for that kind of money, just have him unplugged and have Levin off on the side.
True.
Wouldn't matter. Nobody would notice.
Right. But anyway, asked why he thinks the members of Dokken's classic lineup have had such a problem getting along over the years, Mick said, listen, some people don't change. It was something that was there from day one. I mean, it's never going to go away. It never has gone away, and that's what's making me feel a little bit hesitant about getting together again. I'm like, I already lived through this for so many years. Jeff and I were like, oh, God, we have to go through this with these guys? I'm just thinking I haven't seen a change in either one of them, Don or George.
Nice.
Really? So I don't know what to expect, but hey, I'm willing to find out. In spite of ourselves, we've always seemed to do well. That's what our manager used to tell us. He goes, in spite of yourselves, you guys are really making me mad because you're getting really famous and you shouldn't be because you're just a horrible bunch of guys together. According to Mick, he and Jeff have made countless attempts to get Don and George on the same page without much success. There comes a point where you go, this is just not going to change. And it starts to eat us up alive, he said. You have to decide, well, I'm in or I'm out, and just let it go and play ball with it. Somehow it seems to be working out, but it never is very easy, and I'm sure it's not going to be this time either. So basically, he's just saying, this is going to be fucked.
He's like, it's 1 week. I'll fucking tough it out.
Yeah. Strangely enough, though, somehow Mick can always get along with Don fine.
Mick seems to get along with everybody.
Well, for the most part, yeah.
You know what? And I don't know this to be true, and I don't know that you know the answer to this either, but outside looking in, it just seems like Don's ego and George's ego is fucking too huge for each other. They both think that they're Dokken. And that's always been my assessment, is that's why they can't get along. Because Don thinks he's Dokken and George thinks he's Dokken. And to be honest, if you look at the fan base is 50-50 with that.
That is true.
half the fans say, yeah, it's only Dokken if Don is singing. The other half are like, without George, no Dokken.
Yeah, that's a Jackal thing.
Yeah, but it's true. It's not only a Jackal thing. That's half the fans.
No, what I mean is Jackal was one of those type of fans, is what I'm saying.
And I think those two have humongous egos. And I'm not even saying that as a bad thing, because with talent, to accentuate talent, you got to have a fucking huge ego.
True.
I believe that. I don't believe that there's any fucking there's nobody on a serious talent level that is modest.
Yeah, look at Trump.
Yeah, well, look at anybody. Anybody that's modest is a second tier player. Anybody that is fucking
look at Evel Knievel. I don't know if you ever seen the Evel Knievel documentaries, but even in the documentaries that Evel Knievel did, I mean, there was a guy with a huger ego than Evel Knievel, and he was just like, you got to have that attitude that you're going to grab somebody and just beat him into the ground to be a winner.
Sure. Well, dude, I'll take a guy that I know does not have a lot of talent that made a lot of money, even though he didn't have a lot of talent. Fred Durst from Limp Bizkit. There's nobody going to tell you that guy's an overly talented musician, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
And they spent 10 years as one of the top 5 biggest bands in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because that guy's ego was so big that it accentuated the talent.
True.
And that's what happened with I think with Don and George. They both have huge talent. And, as much as I'm hit or miss with George, I won't argue that the guy is unfucking believably talented.
Sure he is.
But, and I think they had that period where they rose, where they were, they were able to get past their fucking bullshit most of the time. But it got worse and worse and worse to where they both were like, fuck you. And that's why George thought he could just fucking branch off and do it without Don. And he did, really. I mean, Lynch Mob had its own run, too. Not as big as Dokken.
Yeah, but as the old saying goes, that the sum of the parts are, how is it, the sum of the parts are greater than, or the, how does that go? The parts are greater than the sum, or something like the sum of the parts is greater than.
Enough with the saying.
Yeah, whatever. You know what I'm saying.
The bottom line is neither was as big as when they were together. Period.
True.
Lynch Mob never was. Dokken never was again. The only time they had any kind of resurgence when they all got back together. And I'm not saying that as a bad thing, because I'll take Erase the Slate over Breaking the Chains, and I'll take some of the new stuff. I don't hate the new stuff, but they never were as big or as good as when they had that creative tension, maybe, but they were fucking good.
Right.
They may have fucking wanted to kill each other, but that was after they created fucking really brilliant work.
Right. And me, I always look back at Dysfunctional.
Yeah.
I mean, there is just something about that record that is just fantastic and in so many ways.
Yeah, well, it was all the stars aligned. They were all together for the right reason, or for the same reason.
It wasn't a hits record at all.
No.
But boy, it is just a fantastic listen from beginning to end.
They got back together to make money. But look what happened after. Right after it, then what? Then their egos came out again. You got that fucking piece of dog shit right behind it.
Yeah.
Shadow Life is fucking. There's no reason for a band 2 years later to come back with something that bad after something that good.
And do you know the story behind that, right?
I'm thinking George wrote it, right?
He did. He Mick and Jeff. See, the thing is that Don relented at that point.
Yeah.
And said, you know what? If you're so scary talented, you go ahead and write the record.
Right.
You just send me what you wrote, and I'll put lyrics to it.
Right.
I'm not going to be part of the writing process at all.
Right.
And he backed off. He stayed in L.A. George, Mick, and Jeff all lived in Arizona at the time.
Right.
And they wrote the record. Those three.
Are they proud of that record?
I don't know. And then they sent the tracks to Don, and Don laid the lyrics on it.
All right.
And he was just like, you know what? You guys go ahead and write the record. You guys think that you're Dokken? You go right ahead and be Dokken. I'll just wait to see what you guys come up with.
Right.
And that's how that record came about.
Well, and in fairness, George has always been hit or miss. Always been hit or miss.
Well, George is a bandwagon jumper. Whatever is current or popular or trendy, he tries to be that. Instead of being George Lynch, he tries to be whatever it is that's happening at that time.
Right. No, you're right.
But when George is George, there's nobody better.
Yeah, he's damn good when he's ready to play.
Mm-hmm.
When he's ready to play classic rock, he's fucking as good as they come. The only guy better is Eddie. You know, honestly, and I'm not a huge Van Halen guy, but let's appreciate the talent for what it is. But yeah, Lynch is amazing when he wants to be Lynch. But that guy spends so much time being fucking Lynch Biscuit or fucking Souls of Wee Lynch or KXM Lynch or, you know, all these different things that are not him. And it makes his catalog is the most iffy catalog ever. Even the Lynch Mob records. So, I mean, there's like 2 good ones and there's 2 or 3 bad ones. You know, it's I don't know. Again, those guys need to be together to work, but they're neither side is as good without the other, in my eyes.
I agree. All right, Brown continues on. Brown went on to admit that Dokken's proposed reunion is not motivated by creative inspiration. He said, "Listen, if I had to be real honest with you, it's the money we're doing it for, and you think that's the wrong reason. I think the reason should be we want to play together, and I don't think anybody wants to play together. But the money we're being offered to do it, you can't say no. And to me, that's the wrong reason. But there it is."
Bravo, Mick.
You know, just like, hey, this promoter in Japan has been up our ass for the last 10 years. And, you know, put Dokken together. I'll give you a big paycheck. Right. And for the most part, Don has said no for the most part. He almost did it in 2010 when George and Don were on that metal show.
You mean when Eddie Trunk put them together?
Yeah, of course. And the reason they didn't do it is because Pilsen backed out.
Right.
Pilsen said, yeah, I'm in. And then when they said, okay, well, we'll do it, then Pilsen said, well, you know, I'm committed to Foreigner. I can't do it, but you have my blessing to go ahead and do a reunion if you want to.
Yeah, great.
And he was just like, well, wait a minute. It's not really a reunion if you're not going to be part of this.
It works for some bands.
Yeah, I understand. but the thing is, it's just like, it's not really a reunion because Don and Mick are playing together. So what are you doing? You're just adding George? And they got John Levin already. I mean,
yeah. So
what difference does it make? It's not really a reunion.
No, not really.
So it's just like, no, it's not happening.
Yep.
But now Jeff is available. And this promoter offered this money, and Don got the other 3 to agree to his terms, and said, all right, we'll do 6 shows.
Yeah.
That's it. We'll do 6 shows in Japan. We'll do a DVD. We'll be done. Period.
Do 6 shows, pay off my house. It's all good.
Yeah. If anything goes beyond that, we'll see, but it's highly doubtful.
That's right.
It might happen, but you never know. They might kill each other before those 6 shows are over.
Yeah, they might.
So anyway, that's Dokken news.
There we go.